YouTubers, Mike Martin's channel, and I got a question for you guys. In your city or your area, region, county, district, province, wherever you're at, state, what do you call or what is considered social housing, and what is the geared income? In some cities, I know if you make under $20,000 or $25,000, you're considered, I guess, in the poverty line or below the poverty line, and you are geared towards getting assistance with housing and stuff, and you get support to help you get on your feet and get things to the next level and all that stuff. I'd like to know, comment below in your area, because in Vancouver, call it what it is, most Vancouver social housing geared to $50,000 plus incomes. $50,000. Oh, and they just put it out right here. It's like putting lettuce in your cheeseburger and calling it health food. That's exactly right there. This is from a few days ago that was sent to me by a friend. And I want to kind of touch base with this because what is happening? The term social housing could have many definitions. In Vancouver, some may be surprised to learn that the city's definition of social housing includes a studio apartment renting at $1,700 a month. And that's not pesos if you're watching this overseas. This is not pesos. This is Canadian dollars. That's $1,450 US. Earlier this month, the City of Vancouver Twitter account announced the approval of a record 1,938 new social and supportive homes in 2018. A record year for social housing certainly sounds like a good thing in a city with an ongoing housing and homelessness crisis. Citizens might presume all those social housing units help the most vulnerable members of our society. But beyond the tweet, and deep in the 197-page housing data book, who the hell's going to read that, recently released by the city, a more complicated picture emerges. For one thing, more than 60% of those 1,938 new social and supportive homes approved last year are affordable only for households with incomes higher than $50,000 a year. Almost a quarter of them are only affordable for households earning more than $80,000. So a quarter of this right here is 80 grand a year. 80 large a year you need to pony up to be in affordable housing. That is because of how the City of Vancouver defines and tallies social housing. Asked how so many homes for high-income earners counted as social housing, Dan Garrison, Vancouver's Assistant Director of Housing Policy, explained in a recent interview how it works. A building counts as social housing if it is owned and operated by a government or nonprofit society. That's correct, okay? And at least 30% of the units rented to households with incomes below the limits set by BC Housing, which currently stands at $41,500 for a bachelor suite and $58,000 for two income earners for a two-bedroom. But the remaining 70% of the building units could be rented out to households with modern incomes, and every one of them still count towards the city's tally of social housing. That includes housing geared towards household incomes upward to 100 large, which would be double the median household income for Vancouver renters. The median renter household income is $50,250, and the citywide median is $65,423. BC Housing moderate income limits mean that qualify for a two-bedroom apartment, you could earn as much as $107,000, explained Garrison. That means an affordable rent would be $2,675 per month. The upper income limit for social housing studio apartment is $71,000 a year, Garrison said, meaning that rent could be $1,700 per month. So if it's a 600 square foot or 400 square foot bachelor apartment, what are you paying, like $4 a square foot? Holy Christ. Because all of the units are classified as social housing, even the ones only affordable for households earning well above the median incomes, the buildings are exempt from development cost levies, fees, and city typically charges developers to pay facilities made necessary by urban growth, such as engineering, infrastructure, and childcare. This smells to me like somebody may be profiting off this. And if it's all government facilitized and you need minimum 50 large, it looks to me like somewhere, somehow, somebody's pocketing something if you need that kind of income to get into social housing. Building secure rental housing for households earning those incomes between $50,000 and $120,000 is still a crucial objective. Those homes could go to a single parent working full-time as a teacher, for example, or a full-time as a nurse, or a part-time worker. Okay, since when does a social worker, a nurse, and a teacher become low-income housing now? Why? Well, it happened. Because we're completely bought out. The public sector is now going to be on social housing. You work in the public sector, you need to be on social housing, and that's what it looks like it's coming to. Sydney, Australia had to build a building just for police officers, garbage men, mailmen, doctors, plastic surgeons, because they couldn't afford to live in their own city. And this looks like it, kind of almost, matching. No city run without people working these kind of jobs. There you go. There you go. It says it right here. But they don't earn extremely high incomes in these kinds of apartments. Hadn't been built in recent years. The housing situation was presumably the worse than it is now. The municipal stats show the private sector isn't on its own building enough of those homes to meet the city's targets. And a question of how much public should be subsidized those homes is a fair subject for debate. But the method of putting those units on social housing category instead of purpose-built rental and the trumpeting of that record social housing success that rubs some longtime city hall watchers the wrong way. They should just call it what it is. And Natalie Baker, a lawyer with Vancouver Partners LLP, who specializes in municipal law, if you're not being upfront and forthright about what we're dealing with, how do we know we're actually solving the problem and not making it worse? It's kind of crazy to think that's where we're at, and household earning $100,000 lives in social housing, Baker said. Garrison, the city's housing policy director, didn't disagree on either point. The thought that someone who earns 80 large to 100 large a year would live in a non-market housing building is fairly new concept. Well, this is the new ushering in of where things are headed. You make 100 large a year, you're in social housing, buddy. You're not going to make it if you're living in one of these cities. Housing programs in the 1990s and 2000s talked about mixed income, affordable housing, but it wasn't at the start of extremes of mixed incomes we're seeing today. And I think part of this speaks out to housing crisis and how much affordability is a challenge. Because it's not a challenge for people at almost all levels of income in the city to be able to afford housing. Asked if he understands the concerns that the city is padding the status to make the social housing numbers look better than they are, Garrison replied, I definitely understand where that circumstance comes from. I don't disagree with it. All right, goes in back and forth, yada, yada, yada. All right, let's go to here. Yan compromised Statistics Canada data that Vancouver's housing approvals by low income level and found 12% of the units approved over the last 2 years were affordable for housing earnings less than $50,000 a year, a group that makes up 39% of the city's households, including retirees and potentially those who don't declare income in Canada. On the other hand, 66% of those approved during that time were affordable households earning more than $80,000, a group that makes up 40% of all of Vancouver households. So they're not... But okay, let's finish this off. But the confirmation that the city counts on social housing units in this way seems like creative accounting, Yan said. It's like putting lettuce in your cheeseburger and calling it health food, and that's exactly what it is. Guys, they're trimming it and they're renaming it and they're making it seem like they're doing us a favor, that we're saving our doctors and we're saving our mailmen and we're saving everybody that works in the public sector so they don't have to leave the city. But what about honestly, what about the real private sector workers that are working and slaving away to keep the public sector afloat and not